What's up, everybody? Demon back. Welcome to the brand. Oh, that was very weird. Welcome to the brand new video. Welcome to a brand new video. Today we're doing Godzilla-Thon episode 29. Today we're going to be doing 2001's GMK, aka Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All Out Attack. So clearly I couldn't fit the full title on the title card. Now could I? It's just too long. Also, I was gonna put a normal Godzilla on the title, like just like a full body of him, so that he would also be there standing next to himself biting Ghidorah, but I just couldn't fit him in anywhere, so I just had to leave it how it is. But it looks fine. I think it looks fine. So let's talk about what I think is genuinely one of the best Godzilla movies ever made. Right after we talk about Godzilla vs. Megaguirus some more, so I had a review of that last week. If you want, you can go check it out. So last week I talked about the fact that I didn't really like that movie, right? I thought it was okay-ish. I just didn't really like it. The longer it sat with me, the more I kind of disliked it. And the only reason I'm bringing it back up is because some of you guys pointed out, wait a minute, you forgot to mention one key thing, the after credit scene. And I was like, I did not know there was an after credit scene. So I sat down today, watched it. Yeah, there is an after credit scene, so I'll briefly mention it here. It sucks. Like, you got Kenny, he looks out the window, you don't even see it, you just hear Godzilla's roar, and like everything's shaking around him and falling over, and he's all like, oh my god, this is terrible. I hated his character. He got everyone killed. He was the bad guy of the movie, alright? Not a Kenny fan, but he probably got what was coming to him because Godzilla probably killed him afterward. I don't know. That's a little dark, D-man. I don't care about that movie. Okay, so yeah, there's an after credit scene. I guess Godzilla somehow escaped a black hole, which is, impossible. So I guess he did that. But let's move on from that and talk about what I think might be the best Millennium movie ever. I definitely will have to watch the next few for Godzilla-Thon, and I will consider it throughout all of them. I can almost guarantee right now that I do not enjoy the next two more than this movie. Maybe Final Wars. I am a sucker for Final Wars, but I'm not real big on the Mechagodzilla movies, so we'll just have to see. But this movie, man, it's fantastic. So it starts out, and this is one of those ones that gets me right away. Great soundtrack. The music right off the bat gets me all excited. It's awesome. Starts with a recap of what we know is set in this universe. So it's like a military meeting, and they're kind of going over their history, which serves as great exposition for us to tell us what universe this story takes place in. This takes place in a brand new continuity, and it is very different. This is a very, very different movie from all the other movies we've seen in this, basically in the franchise so far. This is the most different version of Godzilla we have ever seen up till Shin Godzilla, and maybe even 98. I definitely think, yeah, I would be willing to say this Godzilla is more different than 98. It's more faithful to the original character, but it's more different than the 98 Godzilla. So now we know this movie takes place in a world where the original Gojira from 1954 did in fact happen. So Godzilla, all those events of the 54 movie, that's already happened. Godzilla's already dead. It also takes place in a universe where the 98 movie is canon, which is kind of weird to think about it, because in that movie they treat it as the first time a giant monster ever showed up, because in that movie's continuity it is the first time a giant monster ever showed up, but in this movie's continuity it's not the first time, and there was a Godzilla in 54 that is just not mentioned during the events of the 98 movie. That's where the legend of Godzilla would presumably come from that movie, which is kind of cool to think about. And obviously none of this is canon for the 98 movie. This is all just in GMK's canon. Godzilla attacks, Zilla attacks New York in 1998. GMK pokes some fun at that, saying that wasn't really Godzilla that attacked the US, which was them making fun of how not Godzilla our Godzilla was. So now that the plot's kicked off, we find out that a nuclear sub has gone missing. It's an American nuclear sub, has gone missing, and the Americans and Japanese set out to find it. The Japanese actually are the ones who wind up spotting the destroyed sub, and it's just completely demolished. When one of the guys is there in a submarine, he spots Godzilla swimming around. He only spots the dorsal fins. It's awesome. This like low-budget news crew is filming a docudrama in the mountains, and they explain they want to make a Godzilla exploitation film in a sense. They want to exploit the history of Japan with Godzilla attacking and make that area a big tourist attraction by making it out like Godzilla, attacked that area or whatever, so that people would want to go visit and see the legend of Godzilla. That night, an elderly couple, which one of the guys is the one who owns the area that is making the Godzilla exploitation film, like where they're filming in. He owns the filming location. He and his wife, presumably, are harassed by this motorcycle gang who wind up destroying some of their property. They destroy this little idol, this little, it's like a little rock statue. The motorcycle crew is killed in the tunnel when it collapses on them, and this is caused by a subterranean monster. Yeah, I know, I ripped that title straight from Frankenstein Conquers the World, didn't I? That awakened during an earlier earthquake when everyone was up in the mountains filming the docudrama. Yuri, our main protagonist, claims no one will listen to her because she's a woman, which kind of feels very out of nowhere, which, I'm not like here to bag on it and be like, screw progressiveness. That is definitely not what I'm here to do. I'm just saying it comes out of nowhere in this movie, and it literally has no bearing on the plot. At least when Honda would do it, he would always make it that it would have a bearing on the plot. You watch the original 54 movie, and he always has the female characters be important characters. That's his thing. He's really great with female characters, and he has that progressiveness for a reason. Like in this movie, she's just like complains about it. Luckily, they don't spend too much time on it, but that kind of feels like her character's full motivation through the movie is that she's like, no one treats me normally, which is not true. Like, she has loads of people that listen to her specifically, but I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make it more like a Honda film and incorporate all his sorts of allegory. I just don't think that this one necessarily lands because they don't do anything interesting with it. I also just find it funny because, like I said, it totally comes completely out of nowhere. She gets drunk and starts complaining about, I wish I was a man. I don't know why I made such a big deal out of it. I just found it funny and wanted to make fun of it. So a friend of hers gives her this book dealing with 3 guardian monsters. And this is the big idea of the movie. This is really the thing that drives the lore of this movie and takes it in such a wild and fascinating direction. So this book about 3 guardian monsters. Some teens rob a store and trespass in Japan. They're like in this lake area, and they destroy the same idol. Well, not technically not the same idol as the motorcycle gang, but it's the same type of idol. They destroy the same type of idol as the motorcycle gang, and basically they like a whole bunch of guys get on a boat and a girl, and they head out in the water, basically to kill this dog that they stuffed in a box. They put some weights in the box, and then they plan to drown the dog in the box, which is, super dark. And I never understood any of this stuff as a little kid. Like, I don't even think I would have thought about the fact that you hear the dog barking and whining when they're drifting it out into the lake. I never thought about a lot of this stuff in this movie, and really it's a very dark movie when you watch it with an adult lens, and, when you watch it when you're older, I should say. Suddenly, the Mothra larva erupts from the water, and it's actually not until much, much, much later in the movie that Mothra is named, but we all know it's Mothra. Finally, Mothra's larva rises up out of the water, killing them, knocking the dog into the water. Somehow it survives overnight, I guess, because we see it later on and it's fine. We see the police rescuing it. And then all the teens on shore are also killed when the Mothra larva surfaces and just kind of runs them over. Takeda takes Yuri home to her father, who's a military general, and nothing more to say about that scene. Everyone is joking around and not taking Godzilla very seriously at this military conference, which kind of feels out of place considering these are all people who would have been alive during Godzilla's attack in 54. But as it's brought up in this movie, a lot of people decided to move on, forget the past, and make fun of it instead of facing the realities of their world, which we do see often in the real world as well. An old man who keeps showing up throughout the movie is arrested. He's played by a veteran Godzilla actor, most notably Shinpei from All Monsters Attack, which is fitting because now he's in Giant Monsters All Out Attack, otherwise known as that weird toy shop guy from Godzilla's Revenge. So he's in this movie. He plays this very mysterious character who we actually know nothing about, because you think you know who he is, and then one of the very last lines of the movie, they throw a curveball at you, and it turns out that he's not this like old professor that you think he is throughout the whole movie. In fact, he is like this spirit person, and we don't know too much about him other than that he's a spirit person. This movie is super crazy with its lore. Like, it's a very spiritual, where most Godzillas aren't. So it's very interesting for that reason. I love it. So this dude basically warns everyone about what's going on. He says Godzilla's about to wake up. You guys be ready because there's a fight coming. And the big push that he tries to make is that everyone needs to wake up Ghidorah. In this movie, the legend of Ghidorah goes like this. Ghidorah is one of 3 guardian monsters, like I said about that book earlier. He is an 8-headed dragon, not a 3-headed dragon, and he is somewhere between 10,000 to 1,000 years old. So this is the little bit confusing part. So technically, he's like super, super, super old, but they never specify how old he is. We know they keep calling him throughout the movie the 1,000-year-old dragon, but we know he's at least 2,000 years old. And then we also know that he'll become a full-grown dragon at 10,000 years old. So it's kind of confusing with all the numbers that they throw around. They don't totally match up. Basically, all that you need to know is that Ghidorah is a dragon that will grow 8 heads if he lives 10,000 years. However, because he has only lived 2,000 years, he is not a full-grown and therefore only has 3 heads. He is an adolescent and not very tall compared to what he will be, and he's not very powerful to what he should be. A family making fun of Godzilla and Odo Island and what they had to go through in the first movie is killed by Godzilla during a typhoon, which is fantastic. Godzilla's first appearance in this movie, you hardly see Godzilla, you only see his foot. Exactly a throwback to the original 54 movie. It happens during a typhoon, exactly like the 54 movie, on an island. I think the island, maybe in the English dub, is actually stated to be Odo Island. So it's a fantastic way to re-tie this movie back to the old movie, and they do a great job making Godzilla, They do a great job tying this one back to the original. That's what I want to say. It turns out Godzilla was reincarnated, so alright, this is the part where we really take a nosedive into this crazy mythology of this movie. So Godzilla was reincarnated by the souls of the dead from World War II. Godzilla is back to remind people of the pain of the past, so he has a motive this time, and he's destroying things for a reason. The idols that everyone keeps breaking are the only things keeping the guardian monsters awake, and as they are destroyed, the guardian monsters will wake up. There's at one point when a man is trying to hang himself, totally didn't get what that was about as a kid. He stands on one of these idols, the ground beneath him breaks, and he doesn't get to hang himself. Like the tie he's holding on to in the branch, it just snaps and he falls down this big pit. He falls down this pit, he breaks this idol, sort of, he chips part of it, and it reveals Ghidorah. This is where we find out that Godzilla's rampage, why he's back destroying Japan, or why he will come back to destroy Japan, is all because he is fueled by not the Japanese soldiers, but the rage of those who were killed by the Japanese soldiers in the 1940s. Super interesting, which is also very weird if you think about it. So Godzilla is basically a culmination of the Americans who died as a result of the Japanese who died as a result of the Americans, the innocents who died as a result of both, and then those who were killed by the Japanese in war crimes like the Chinese and everything like that. Very, very interesting. I wish we could see some more inner conflict with Godzilla, where you can see like the American spirits trying to take over, or the Japanese spirits taking over, so that you could see a little bit more of that conflict going on within Godzilla. All we really know is that Godzilla was brought back to life in order to remind people of what happened in the past by the Japanese soldiers, and now he is enraged by those who were killed by the Japanese soldiers, and that's why he's so destructive and evil. But is it really evil at that point? Because then it's more of revenge than evil, so it's an interesting debate you could bring up. Admiral Tachibana reveals that he was one of the people in the 1954 attack. His character wasn't in the original 54 movie, but he was someone in that situation, because yes, there were a lot of people that would have been alive during that time period that are still alive now. So it's cool to see that we have a character who was alive back then. Now it's 50 years later. and he's a military general who hates Godzilla as a result of what he went through. We find out that Godzilla killed his parents, which is a cool flashback scene. Sadly, we don't get to see any Godzilla during that flashback scene. That would have been pretty sweet. Especially because this Godzilla design is very reminiscent of the Showa designs. It basically throws everything out that they did with the redesigns from the Millennium era, except for the longer dorsal fins. And they basically go back to the Showa movies, to the 54 movie, and then do minor tweaks. Take away Godzilla's ears. I think, maybe he has ears. I think they take away his ears and they kind of arch his back a little more. And then they turn him from gray, they turn him black. So, and they also white out the eyes. I tried to do that with my character on the title card, but it just looked weird, so I had to put pupils in. But they white out the eyes of Godzilla to make him very, almost soulless, which is funny because of how many souls he has within him. So it's like he's soulless looking, but really he's soulful, because he's full of souls. Get it? Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. Baragon, now finally named in the movie, is causing earthquakes all underground through Japan. He surfaces and destroys a police station. Basically, he releases Shinpei from Godzilla's Revenge. He releases him from jail. Baragon moves near Mount Fuji. Godzilla surfaces. It's a great scene. Godzilla surfaces, and you just see how huge he is. There's massive scale in this movie. The old man goes to wake up Ghidorah, who is frozen in ice. Godzilla kills off the only survivor from his attack during the typhoon earlier, which is freaking an amazing parallel that they don't even, they don't have to call it out. This is just such a hidden reference that it's awesome. It's like something that you would see nowadays, where in the original Godzilla movie, you have Shinkichi's brother, who is on a ship that's attacked by Godzilla. Later on, he's the only one who has seen Godzilla, and he's killed during the typhoon by Godzilla. This girl is the only one who's seen Godzilla during the typhoon, and she's killed by Godzilla during his surface later on. It's a great parallel that those who see Godzilla usually don't live to tell the tale, and if you have seen him, you're basically cursed from that point on out. It's awesome. I love that reference. It's so cool, and it's worked in there great. Also, this is one of the only Godzilla movies that I can think of where you actually see people dying as a result of Godzilla. Like you don't, it doesn't dance around it. It shows you people getting stepped on. You see Godzilla's tail smash this building right where she is. You know she's there because you just saw her perspective of it. You see people dying in this movie. I can only think of, you see a little bit of that in Shin Godzilla, a little bit of that in the 54 movie. You don't see that in, I don't think, any other movie. Maybe 84, I don't remember. But you don't see that a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. The atomic breath in this movie is so powerful. It's in fact so powerful that it leaves behind a mushroom cloud after Godzilla uses it, another great parallel to the roots of Godzilla in the atomic bomb. Godzilla and Baragon are on a beeline towards each other, and every time someone disrespects a kaiju or the past in this movie, they wind up dead, as seen when some people are taking pictures of Baragon, calling him all cute, and then Godzilla shows up behind a freaking mountain, bursting through it and killing them. It was one of those big takeaways I had as a kid. It was like, Godzilla has the atomic breath, he fights other monsters, and he is big enough to plow through a mountain. Like, that's what I always thought of. So anytime I saw the mountains, I always thought Godzilla's bigger than that. Now, obviously, I know otherwise, but back then, I was always like, that's the coolest thing in the world. Godzilla can bust through a mountain. That is awesome. And it also reminds me a lot of that scene from King Kong 1976, when you see Kong, he's ripping through this big banner, this wall that's blocking off like a parking lot or something from that little show area where he was being displayed in. And they're kind of filmed in the exact same way, so it always reminds me of that. Godzilla and Baragon get into a fight. Baragon gets some good shots in here and there. He starts out the fight. Baragon's the one who starts out the fight. He knocks Godzilla over by burrowing under him. He is able to bite Godzilla and kind of swing him around a little bit, but he doesn't do too much. But Godzilla overall just obliterates him, just tanking everything that Baragon has, and then eventually blowing him up, literally obliterating him with the atomic breath, and just Baragon explodes into pieces. So Godzilla's, like I said, his atomic breath is super powerful, or maybe Baragon's just that weak. I choose to think it was the first option. Now, Baragon is toned down from how he was in Frankenstein vs. Baragon. In that movie, He jumped a whole bunch, and he was a formidable foe against Frankenstein, who was a lot faster than Godzilla ever is. Baragon had a heat beam, and he had a whole bunch of abilities that we never saw in the movie, like he could cup his eyes with his ears, and he could use his horn to ram things, and that's actually how he digs, is he'll cup his ears around his face so that his eyes don't get hurt, and then he digs with his horn. I wish we could have seen some more of these abilities in GMK. I know it's a very crowded movie and they didn't want to waste our time with that, but I would just like to see Baragon put up a little bit better of a fight against Godzilla. Ghidorah starts to wake up as Baragon is killed. There's lots of footage of human damage in this movie, a lot of recovery in the hospital, which is also great reference to the 54 movie, great way to bring it back to the roots of Godzilla. This movie, despite being extremely different than the original movie, is also very similar in a lot of ways, just like Shin Godzilla. Who do you think directed Shin Godzilla? Definitely it was someone who worked on GMK. That's what I'm saying. Tokyo is evacuated and Yuri heads out on a bike to get footage of Godzilla. Missiles, that I worded this super weird in my notes. Missiles bomb Godzilla. Obviously, they're missiles. But the military jets combat Godzilla. It's a great sequence that really shows how powerful Godzilla is. And there's, like I said, throughout this whole movie, there's just massive scale. All the jets are firing these huge bombs at Godzilla, and he's just not having it. So he shoots them all down with his atomic breath. Ghidorah finally wakes up. Mothra hatches from a cocoon that was floating in a lake. Fantastic Mothra effects. When she finally wakes up, her wings spread out and you watch all the membranes slowly come down. It's so well handled. It turns out that Serizawa's sacrifice was covered up in this timeline, and the people of Japan thought that it was the military who killed Godzilla back in 54, which is why the military generals in this movie are so shocked that Godzilla is just not affected by anything they do. They're like, how is this possible? And then it's finally revealed at this point in the movie, and when one of the generals who knows more than anyone else says, we couldn't even, we didn't even hurt him back in the 50s. That was all one guy who did that. The Mothra twins have a neat little cameo. They're not actually the Mothra twins, but they're two twins who look at Mothra, and it's an obvious reference to the Mothra twins, so I do like that. I would like something like that in Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019, if not the actual Mothra fairies. Also, I think this is the only incarnation of Mothra to date to not feature the Mothra fairies with her. We have Final Wars has them. I do believe Tokyo SOS has them. In fact, I think I know it does. The original obviously has them. Rebirth series has them. And then Godzilla from the 90s has them. Every Showa movie has them too. So this is the first and only time, I think, that Mothra is on her own without her fairies. She also doesn't have much of a characterization in this movie, so it's I like Mothra with the fairies, and I like Mothra with the characterization. She doesn't really get anything in this movie, so I'm not a big fan of Mothra in this movie. The effects are fantastic though, and then same with Ghidorah. He has a characterization, I just don't like it. So Tokyo is turned into a war zone with the military basically setting up ambush sites on every street so that if Godzilla shows up, he'll be attacked. Godzilla is about to fight the military when suddenly Mothra shows up and he starts fighting Mothra. Mothra shoots all these projectiles at Godzilla. We've never seen that ability before, and we've never seen it since. It actually really hurts Godzilla, and this is a pretty physical fight with Mothra attacking Godzilla's head quite a bit. Ghidorah shows up. Not only is he super small compared to usual, Ghidorah's actually smaller than Godzilla in this movie, but he's the good guy, which is something I will never forgive this movie for. Ghidorah's not supposed to ever be the good guy. I can see if you make him neutral, fine, whatever. But don't make him the good guy. I don't want to see Ghidorah protecting the Earth. I want to see him destroying it. I get that you can't have two bad guys, but they should have picked someone other than Ghidorah, and I know the original plan was to have it be Baragon, Varan, and I believe Anguirus be the ones for this movie. I don't think it was supposed to be Mothra, but I know Varan was supposed to be in Ghidorah's place, and they just thought that it wouldn't have the appeal that way. Personally, I think they should have gone for it. I don't really like Ghidorah's characterization in this movie. He doesn't feel like King Ghidorah to me, and he really doesn't do anything that's that significant that you would have needed Ghidorah to do. He doesn't have anything like that in this movie. Varan has the flight ability. He has the same face sculpt. They did sculpt Ghidorah's face in this movie after Varan. Varan would have been fine in this role. And also, maybe in that version of the movie, Baragon would have had more to do and he would have had his original abilities. So Ghidorah possesses this new electric bite, which we've never seen before, that weakens Godzilla. Ghidorah gets his butt handed to him. He does not put up a fight against Godzilla. He's just thrown around, blasted by the atomic breath. He's killed. There's this great part during Godzilla's fight with Ghidorah when Mothra tries to come up on Godzilla, and Godzilla just swats her out of the air with his tail. It's hilarious. Godzilla sets Mothra on fire. He destroys most of the military after they shoot these super powerful missiles on him that have these drills attached that really hurt him. Then Ghidorah gets a power boost after Mothra is killed because Godzilla killed Mothra and all her energy transfers into Ghidorah, giving him this super ability, turning him into King Ghidorah. And he rises from the dead to fight Godzilla. Yuri is arrested so that she can't get hurt, so she's basically just taken out of the way. Godzilla's hit by a spirit bomb. Ghidorah creates this force field out of electricity. Godzilla fires the atomic breath into it, and Ghidorah just pops that thing right back at him, sending Godzilla flying into the ocean. It bursts a huge cut open on Godzilla's shoulder and his neck. There's a big underwater battle. We only see bits and pieces of it between Godzilla and Ghidorah. Tachibana plans to use this sub with the powerful drill that they shot on the missiles earlier attached to it to drive it into Godzilla in order to kill him. One stray bolt of the atomic breath, just to give you a little bit of how powerful it is enough to destroy an entire bridge, nearly killing Yuri. Ghidorah saves Yuri by roaring in the water, sending this huge bubble airwave up, splashed in the water up, and then is able to catch her when she falls off the bridge. Just now in the movie, this is the only time in the movie, Ghidorah finally uses his lightning breath, which is a classic trademark of the character. Godzilla they don't wait that long to use it in Godzilla King of the Monsters. So Godzilla is supercharged by Ghidorah's atomic breath. By Ghidorah's lightning breath, it does nothing against Godzilla. He just takes it in. And then Godzilla uses this super atomic breath to blow up Ghidorah. Everything explodes. Probably one of the biggest explosions we've seen in a Godzilla movie. It's so big that it dwarfs Godzilla. It's just a massive bomb that goes off when Godzilla blows up Ghidorah. All the guardian monsters reveal themselves in spirit form. Tachibana is able to kill Godzilla by by driving the submarine into Godzilla's mouth and driving it out of the wound in Godzilla's shoulder. This does something where Godzilla the next morning, tries to use his atomic breath and it fires out of his shoulder every time he tries to use it because it can't make it up out of his chest into his mouth. Even though you see it illuminate his mouth, it comes out of his shoulder because it has nowhere to come. It builds up in the chest and it has nowhere to go other than that hole. And it winds up disintegrating Godzilla somehow. So Tachibana gets away, Godzilla's dead. The people of Japan are reminded of Godzilla once more, but Godzilla's still alive, just to remind everybody that they really need to stay in check, otherwise he'll attack again. And by still alive, I mean he is reduced to literally nothing but a heart, and it's still beating, and it's still going to regenerate, presumably, back into Godzilla. Awesome. Godzilla's unkillable. I love this incarnation. Glad we don't see it again because it's too overpowered, but it's really cool for the movie. The human stuff in this movie is great. Super interesting lore to this movie. The characters are fascinating, and I really enjoy the plot, and we see a lot of human damage, which we haven't really seen since the original. The kaiju stuff is great. It's very scary, much more than usual. It's epic. I don't like Ghidorah, but otherwise, this movie's kaiju stuff is amazing. The music is fantastic. It's very new and very original, and the effects are some of the best, handled by none other than Shinji Higuchi, aka Shin Godzilla's director. Not to take away anything from Anno. I know Anno also directed Shin Godzilla, but everyone always gives Anno some credit. I'm just trying to give my boy Shinji some credit for once in my life. However, the sad thing is Shinji was uncredited for this movie. He didn't get any mention in the ending credits, which is unfair because the guy does a fantastic job. This movie is respectful to the original. It's very powerful, and it feels like the original movie, but done all over again. This is one of the great Godzilla movies that really nails what would happen, other than the crazy lore, what would happen if Godzilla was in the real world. It's up there with the original 1984 and Biollante. This movie is a definite 9 out of 10. I love it. I definitely recommend it to all Godzilla fans. If you haven't seen it, you gotta go check it out. It's fantastic. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, this one's a 9 out of 10. See you guys next time. D-Man, out.